Here's a brutal truth that might change how you see yourself forever. Take a person sitting silently in a chair, lost in a novel. Now, take a person screaming their lungs out at a football stadium, veins bulging, high-fiving strangers. Science says the person in the chair is the one doing the heavy lifting. And it's not even close. We've been lied to about what it means to participate in life. For decades, society has told us that reading fiction is escapism, a retreat, a coping mechanism for people who can't handle the real world. They call us bookworms, introverts, dreamers. The implication is clear. While we have our heads buried in pages, everyone else is out there living. But what if that's completely backward? Recent MRI studies on neuroplasticity have revealed something terrifyingly beautiful about the human brain. When you read a story, you're not escaping reality. You're running a high-fidelity flight simulator for human existence, and your brain can't tell the difference. Right now, you might think your love of books is just a quiet hobby, something you do to unwind. But in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the biological evidence that reading is actually an intense form of neural training. We're going to look at what happens inside the brains of sports fans versus book lovers, and you're going to see why the screaming fan is often the passive one, while the silent reader is engaged in a complex, high-stakes emotional workout. We'll discover how ink on a page can physically rewire your neural pathways, building a superpower called theory of mind that most people will never fully develop. By the end of this video, you'll understand why you feel genuinely exhausted after finishing a great book, why you sometimes feel more connected to fictional characters than to your actual neighbors, and why this specific trait gives you a profound advantage in understanding the human condition. This isn't just about books. This is about the architecture of your mind. We're going to dismantle the myth of the lonely reader and replace it with the science of the empathy athlete. If you've ever felt guilty for staying in on a Friday night to finish a chapter, if you've ever felt like you've lived 1,000 lives while your friends have only lived one, this video is the validation you've been waiting for. Let's open the book on your brain. We need to start with the hardware. To understand why readers are different, we have to talk about neuroplasticity. For most of history, scientists believed the brain was fixed, like a computer chip. You were born with a certain capacity for empathy, a certain level of intelligence, and that was your lot. But we were wrong. The brain is plastic. It reshapes itself based on what you feed it. And nothing feeds the brain quite like a narrative. When you watch a movie, your brain processes visual and auditory data. You're a spectator. You're watching things happen to other people on a screen. But reading is fundamentally different. Reading requires active construction. The words on the page are just code symbols on paper. Your brain has to decode them, build the set, cast the actors, light the scene, and direct the whole production. All in real time, all inside your skull. A fascinating study at Emory University placed participants in an MRI machine while they read a thriller novel. The scans revealed something extraordinary. When characters in the book ran, the motor cortex in the reader's brain lit up the same region that activates when you run. When characters smelled coffee, the olfactory cortex fired. This happens because of mirror neuron cells that dissolve the barrier between self and other. To your brain, there is almost no difference between reading about an experience and living it. You're not just processing information, you're simulating reality, but it goes deeper than sensory mimicry. And this is where we need to talk about the difference between a book lover and a sports fan. Picture a stadium. 50,000 people screaming. The energy is electric. Dopamine is flooding the crowd. It looks like the ultimate shared human experience. But psychologically, it's often a parasocial bond. You're projecting your emotions onto a team or an athlete who doesn't know you exist. The relationship flows one direction. The outcome is completely out of your hands. If they lose, you crash. If they win, you get a temporary high. Your emotional state is outsourced. Now look at the reader. When you open a novel, you're not forming a parasocial bond. You're engaging in a reciprocal emotional investment. You step inside the protagonist's mind. You hear their thoughts. You feel their doubts. You wrestle with their moral dilemmas as if they were your own. This creates a state of deep immersion that's categorically different from spectating. Unlike the sports fan waiting for an external result, the reader is generating internal meaning. You control the pace. You can pause, reflect, reread a passage that hit you in the chest. This builds a different kind of dopamine loop, not the cheap, jagged spike of gambling or watching a game-winning shot. It's a slow, sustained release of satisfaction that comes from understanding. And this brings us to the superpower I mentioned earlier, theory of mind. This is the psychological term for the ability to understand that other people have beliefs, desires, and intentions that differ from your own. It sounds simple. It's actually the most complex social skill a human being can develop. And readers are the Olympians of theory of mind. When you navigate a complex plot with multiple characters, you force your brain to map out an entire social network that doesn't even exist. You track who knows what, who's lying to whom, why a character is acting against their own best interests. You hold contradictory perspectives in your mind simultaneously. This is a brutal workout for the prefrontal cortex, and it pays dividends in the real world. I used to believe my obsession with fictional worlds made me less equipped for the real one. I thought I was missing out on social development because I wasn't at the party. I wasn't at the game. I was in my room, reading. But the science suggests the opposite. The time you spend inside the pages of a book is a high-intensity training camp for empathy. You're simulating social interactions that are far more complex and intimate than most casual conversations you'll ever have in real life. You're learning to see the world through lenses that are utterly foreign to your own experience. You're living as a different gender, a different culture, a different century. You're systematically breaking the echo chamber of your own ego. Think about the implications of this. In a world that's becoming increasingly polarized, where we retreat into our tribes and shout at each other across the internet, the reader has a distinct advantage. The sports fan mentality dominates our political and social discourse. Us versus them, win or lose, my side versus yours. But the reader's brain is wired differently. It's wired for nuance. You know that the villain often has a tragic backstory. You know that the hero is deeply flawed. You're comfortable sitting with ambiguity because you've practiced it. You don't need the simple, black and white narrative that the news cycle feeds you, because you've trained your brain to handle the messy, complicated gray areas of the human condition. That's not weakness. That's sophistication. But here's the catch. This deep empathy comes at a cost. It's why you feel that specific kind of exhaustion after finishing a great book. It's not eye strain. It's not physical tiredness. It's emotional fatigue. You've just lived a life that wasn't yours. You've processed grief that wasn't yours, love that wasn't yours, loss that physically altered your neural pathways. Your brain doesn't know it was fiction. To your nervous system, you just survived something. And this is where the magic happens. This process, this act of reallocating your tribal instincts from us versus them to me and you, builds something rare. A stable, resilient sense of self. You're not dependent on your team winning to feel good about your week. You're not dependent on external validation to know your own worth. Your identity is constructed on internal victories. The victory of understanding. The victory of perspective. You've conquered worlds inside your own mind. You've solved mysteries. You've survived tragedies. You've loved and lost people who never existed and grown from it anyway. Even though it all happened in silence, the growth is loud. And it's real. So, here's the final twist. The world celebrates the extrovert, the loud participant, the one in the arena, covered in dust and sweat. We're taught that life happens outside, in the noise, in the action, in the crowd. But if you look at the actual architecture of happiness, the reader has stumbled onto a secret that the rest of the world is still desperately chasing. It's called flow. While the sports fan rides a roller coaster of emotions they can't control, dependent on a referee's call, a player's mistake, forces entirely outside themselves, the reader enters a state of perfect psychological flow. You're not a victim of the narrative. You're a co-creator of it. You determine the pace. You control when to engage and when to step back. This builds a type of self-worth that's increasingly rare in modern society. It's stable. It's internal. It's not fragile. Think about how many people you know whose mood is dictated by the news cycle, by social media likes, by the score of last night's game. Their happiness is outsourced to forces they'll never control. But yours? Yours is built on the internal victories of the mind. Every time you finish a book, you've completed a journey. You've processed a complex simulation of human experience. You've expanded your empathy toolkit in ways that compound over a lifetime. This gives you a quiet confidence that doesn't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to prove you're engaging with life because you know you're processing it at a depth most people can't even perceive. So, the next time someone tells you to get your nose out of a book and join the real world, remember this: you're not hiding. You're training. You're not avoiding people. You're learning to understand them better than they understand themselves. You're reallocating your tribal instincts away from the petty conflicts of us versus them and channeling them into the highest form of human intelligence: empathy. You're building a mind that is resilient, open, and profoundly connected to the full spectrum of human experience. Don't let the noise of the spectators drown out the quiet power of your own understanding. Keep reading, keep simulating, keep living 1,000 lives. Because in a world obsessed with winning and losing, the only true victory is understanding. And you, my friend, are the champion of that game. If you found yourself in this description, you need to be careful. Because having this level of empathy comes with a dangerous side effect that almost no one talks about. It's called empathy fatigue, and it might be the reason you feel completely drained around certain people. In the next video, I'm going to expose the dark side of being a deep reader and the specific type of person you need to recognize and protect yourself from. You don't want to miss that warning. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications now, because your peace of mind might depend on it.